The winter storm had been raging for 3 days when Ilara heard the scratching at her cabin door. She lived alone on the outskirts of the Silverwood territory, neither fully within the pack's protection nor entirely beyond its reach. As an Omega without a mate, she occupied that precarious space between belonging and exile, tolerated but never truly welcomed. The other wolves whispered that she was too soft, too human in her ways. She kept chickens and tended a garden. She baked bread and sang to herself while hanging laundry. She had no interest in the brutal hierarchies that governed pack life. The scratching came again, more desperate this time. Ilara set down her mending and approached the door cautiously. Rogues sometimes wandered these woods, driven mad by isolation or exile. But when she cracked open the door, wind howling through the gap, she found not a rogue warrior, but something far more pitiful. A wolf pup, barely weaned, collapsed in her doorway. Its dark fur was matted with ice and blood, one hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle. The pup's golden eyes, far too aware, far too old for such a small creature, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Oh, little one," she whispered, all caution forgotten. She gathered the trembling pup into her arms and kicked the door shut against the storm. The creature whimpered as she carried it to the hearth, laying it gently on the rug before the fire. Up close, she could see the extent of its injuries. Deep claw marks raked across its ribs, the broken leg, and something else. Burn marks along its shoulder, as if it had been branded. Ilara worked through the night. She cleaned the wounds with warm water and herbs, set the broken leg as best she could with splints and bandages, and wrapped the pup in soft blankets. When it whimpered with pain, she held it close, humming the lullabies her own mother had sung to her long ago. Near dawn, the pup's fever spiked. It thrashed and cried, a sound that tore at Ilara's heart. She knew what it needed, what all young wolves needed when injured or ill. Without thinking, she shifted partially, just enough to allow her wolf's healing properties to flow. She cradled the pup against her chest, letting it nurse, her wolf's milk carrying the antibodies and magic that could save its life. The pup latched on desperately, and Ilara felt the connection form. Not a mate bond, but something equally profound, a bond of protection, of chosen family. As the sun rose, painting the snow-covered pines in shades of gold and rose, the pup finally slept. Ilara dozed beside it, one hand resting on its small body, feeling the steady rise and fall of its breathing. She didn't hear the approach of horses until they were nearly at her door. The pounding made her jolt awake. "Open, by order of the Alpha King!" Ilara's blood turned to ice. The Alpha King never came to the borderlands. His seat of power was in the great lodge at the heart of Silverwood, where the ancient trees grew so thick that snow never touched the ground, and moonlight pooled like silver water. She stumbled to the door, the pup still sleeping by the fire, and opened it to find a sight that stole her breath. 12 warriors on horseback, their armor bearing the royal crest, a wolf's head crowned with oak leaves, and at their center, mounted on a black destrier that stamped and snorted in the cold, was Theron Blackwood himself, the Alpha King. Ilara had never seen him up close. Few Omegas ever did. He was massive, even in human form, with shoulders that seemed carved from the same granite as the mountains. His hair was black as a raven's wing, falling to his shoulders, and his eyes, wolf-gold and merciless, swept over her with an intensity that made her want to bow, to bare her throat in submission. She forced herself to stand straight. "Your Majesty." "Where is he?" Theron's voice was a rumble of barely contained fury. "Where is the pup?" Ilara's mind raced. How did he know? Why did he care about one injured pup in the midst of winter? "I don't know what you—" "Do not lie to me, Omega." He dismounted in one fluid motion, and suddenly he was stalking toward her, all predator grace and coiled violence. "My scouts tracked him here. A rogue pup, stolen from his mother's den and left to die in the storm. You will surrender him now." Something in his words, stolen, left to die, made Ilara's protective instincts flare. She moved to block the doorway, her small frame laughable against his towering presence, but her resolve absolute. "He's sleeping. He's injured and weak, and I won't let anyone disturb him." The warriors behind Theron went very still. One didn't refuse an Alpha King's command. One certainly didn't refuse when one was an unmated Omega with no pack standing. Theron's eyes narrowed. "Are you there?" He needed help. Ilara lifted her chin, even as her wolf screamed at her to submit, to drop her gaze. "He came to my door dying, and I saved him. That gives me rights, even in your kingdom, your majesty, the law of sanctuary." A dangerous smile curved Theron's mouth. "You know the old laws, interesting." He took another step forward. Close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell the pine and smoke and wild places that clung to his skin. "And you know the rest of that law, little Omega? That sanctuary given creates a debt, a bond." "I know." "Then you understand that by saving him you've bound yourself to his fate." Theron's hand shot out, catching her chin, tilting her face up to his. His touch was surprisingly gentle, but there was nothing gentle in his eyes. "And his fate is far more complicated than you can imagine." Behind him, one of the warriors shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, we should—" "Silence." Theron didn't look away from Ilara. "Tell me, Omega, what do you see when you look at that pup?" "A child who needed help." "Look again." There was command in his voice, the Alpha's power that made her wolf rise against her will. Ilara felt her eyes shift, her wolf's vision layering over her human sight. She turned toward the hearth, toward the sleeping pup, and gasped. The pup's aura blazed like a second sun, royal gold threaded with silver and crimson, the aura of an Alpha. Not just any Alpha, but— "Your son," she whispered. "My heir," Theron corrected, his hand dropping from her chin. "Stolen from the royal nursery 3 nights ago by enemies who sought to end his life before he could grow into his power. They left him in the storm to die, believing no one would find him in time." His jaw clenched. "They didn't account for a stubborn Omega with a soft heart." Ilara's mind reeled. She had fed the future king. She had created a bond with the heir to Silverwood. The implications were staggering. "I didn't know," she said weakly. "Clearly." Theron moved past her into the cabin, his warriors remaining outside. He knelt beside his son, his large hand gentle as it touched the pup's head. The little one stirred, golden eyes blinking open, and immediately tried to crawl toward Ilara. Theron's expression flickered with something, surprise, pain, before smoothing into careful neutrality. "He's imprinted on you. Completely. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" "Don't apologize for saving his life." Theron stood, and when he looked at her again, something had shifted in his gaze. A calculation, yes, but also a grudging respect. "You invoked sanctuary. You've bonded with the heir. By pack law, that makes you responsible for his care until he's weaned and can survive without you." Ilara's heart hammered. "I don't understand what you're saying." "I'm saying, little Omega, that you're coming back to the lodge with me. You're going to finish what you started." He moved closer, and this time there was something almost predatory in his smile. "You're going to be his nursemaid, his guardian, and until my enemies are found and dealt with, you're going to stay in the royal quarters under my personal protection." "But I can't just— I have a life here. You have nothing here but isolation and loneliness." His words were blunt, but not unkind. "At the lodge, you'll have safety, purpose. And when Kyle is weaned, if you wish to return to your little cabin, I won't stop you." The pup, Kyle, whimpered, reaching for her with one small paw. Ilara felt the tug of the bond, stronger than reason, stronger than fear. "Do I have a choice?" Theron's smile faded. "There's always a choice, Ilara. You can come willingly, as his guardian, honored and protected. Or you can refuse, and I'll take him anyway. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you abandoned a child who needed you." He paused. "But I don't think that's who you are." He was right. Damn him, he was right. Ilara looked at the pup, at Kyle, and felt her decision crystallize. "I'll need to pack. You have 10 minutes, my men will help." Theron's hand found her shoulder, and the touch sent unexpected warmth through her. "Thank you, Ilara, for his life, for your courage. You may not believe this now, but you've done more than save one pup. You've given Silverwood its future." As she moved through her cabin, gathering her few possessions, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that her own future had just shifted as irrevocably as the seasons. She had fed a hungry pup, and in doing so, she had bound herself to a destiny far larger than she could have imagined, the Alpha King's son, the heir to Silverwood, and somehow, impossibly, hers to protect. Chapter 2. The Royal Lodge and its Shadows. The journey to the heart of Silverwood took 2 days. Ilara rode in a covered carriage. Kale nestled in her arms, wrapped in furs against the bitter cold. Through the window, she watched the forest change. The sparse pines of the borderlands gave way to ancient oaks and silver birches that grew so tall their tops disappeared into mist. The snow here sparkled with an otherworldly light, and she could feel the magic thrumming through the ground, old pack magic woven into the very roots of the trees. Theron rode alongside the carriage, always within sight. She caught glimpses of him through the window, his broad back straight in the saddle, his attention constantly scanning the forest. He was hunting, she realized, still searching for whoever had stolen his son. On the second evening, they arrived. The Royal Lodge rose from the forest floor like something out of legend. It wasn't a single building, but a complex of structures built around and into the massive trees. Walkways spiraled up trunks as wide as houses. Great halls carved from living wood glowed with warm light. And at the center, the throne room, a cathedral of branches and moonlight where the Alpha King held court. Ilara had never seen anything so beautiful or so intimidating. Impressive, isn't it? Theron appeared at the carriage door, offering his hand to help her down. Kyle was sleeping again, exhausted by the journey. "My great-great-grandfather built it when he unified the packs. Every Alpha King since has added to it." She took his hand, trying not to notice how her small fingers disappeared in his grip. "It's magnificent. It's a prison." The words were so quiet she almost missed them. Then his public mask snapped back into place. "Come, your quarters are in the royal wing, safest place in Silverwood." He led her through torchlit corridors where warriors bowed and courtiers whispered behind their hands. Ilara felt their eyes on her, curious, speculating, some openly hostile. An Omega in the royal wing was unheard of. An Omega carrying the heir was scandalous. "Ignore them," Theron murmured, his hand moving to the small of her back, proprietary and protective. "They'll adjust." Her quarters were larger than her entire cabin, a bedroom with a bed that could sleep 4, a sitting room with plush furniture and a fireplace already crackling with warmth, and adjoining it, a nursery painted in soft golds and creams, with a cradle carved from moonwood and runes of protection etched into every surface. "This was meant for Kyle," Theron said, watching as she laid the sleeping pup in the cradle. "But after he was taken, I couldn't." He stopped, jaw tight. "His mother died in childbirth. He's all I have, and I failed to protect him." The raw pain in his voice made Ilara turn. "You didn't fail. He's alive. He's safe now." "Because of you." Theron crossed the room and she found herself backed against the cradle as he loomed over her. But there was no threat in his proximity, only intensity and something that might have been wonder. "I've been Alpha King for 10 years, Ilara. I've won wars and brokered peace. I've executed traitors and rewarded the loyal. But I couldn't save my own son. You did that. An Omega with no pack, no standing, no reason to risk herself. Any decent person would have no." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Most would have been too afraid. Rogues kill Omegas for sport. You had every reason to bar your door and pretend you heard nothing. But you didn't." Ilara's breath caught. This close she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, the faint scars on his jaw. He was terrifying and mesmerizing in equal measure. "I need you to understand something," Theron continued, his voice dropping to a rumble that she felt in her bones. "While you're here under my protection, no one will harm you. No one will disrespect you. You're not just Kale's guardian. You're under royal decree, do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." He stepped back and she could breathe again. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to the court." "And Ilara?" He paused at the door. "Thank you. For everything." After he left, Ilara sank into a chair, her hands shaking. What had she gotten herself into? The next morning, Dai's servant arrived with clothes, soft wool dresses in omega blue, but trimmed with silver thread marking her new status. When Ilara entered the great hall for breakfast, every conversation stopped. The hall was filled with pack members of every rank, betas managing the day's business, warriors planning patrols, and at the high table the inner circle, Theron's advisors and the pack's elite. Theron stood as she entered, and the message was clear. She was to sit at the high table. With him. The whispers erupted the moment she took her seat, Kyle cradled in her arms. An Omega? At the high table? Who does she think she is? The king's lost his mind. One voice rose above the others. Cold, cultured, female. Your Majesty, surely this is inappropriate. An unmated Omega, handling the air. What if she's working with the traitors? Ilara looked up to find the speaker, a striking she-wolf with auburn hair and the bearing of high rank. Her dress was rich green velvet, and she wore a silver circlet that marked her as nobility. Lady Morgana. Theron's voice could have frozen fire. You forget yourself. I speak only out of concern for the pack, Your Majesty. Morgana's smile was poisonous sweetness. Surely a proper Luna should be caring for the prince, or at least a beta of good standing. This Omega appeared from nowhere. How do we know she's trustworthy? Before Theron could respond, Kyle stirred in Ilara's arms and shifted. The tiny human baby that appeared had his father's black hair and golden eyes, but his face was all innocent trust as he reached for Ilara, making soft cooing sounds. The hall went silent. Baby wolves didn't shift so young, not unless they felt completely safe, completely bonded. That's how we know, Theron said quietly. My son trusts her. That's all the proof I need. Morgana's face twisted with barely concealed rage before she forced a smile. Of course, Your Majesty. Forgive my concern. But as breakfast continued, Ilara felt Morgana's eyes on her like daggers. She wasn't the only one. Several other wolves watched her with calculation or hostility. Later, as Theron walked with her back to her quarters, Ilara voiced her concern. Lady Morgana hates me. Morgana wants to be Luna, has wanted it since my mate died. Theron's tone was dismissive. She has ambition but no heart. She wouldn't have saved Kyle if she'd found him in that storm. She'd have seen only the political implications of his death. Why do you keep her at court if you don't trust her? Keep your enemies close. He stopped at her door, his expression grave. Ilara, I need to tell you something. The wolves who took Kale, we've identified them. They were hired. Someone inside the court paid them. Her blood ran cold. So the traitor is still here. Yes, and now that you're here, bonded to Kale, you're a target too. Whoever wants him dead will want you dead as well. His hands gripped her shoulders. That's why you can't leave the royal wing without guards. Why I need you to be careful, trust no one. Not even you? A muscle in his jaw ticked. Especially not me. I'm the Alpha King, Ilara. Everything I do is political, everything. But his eyes said something different. They said, trust me anyway. That night, as Ilara nursed Kyle and sang him soft lullabies, she heard voices in the corridor. She crept to the door and listened. Complete disaster. An Omega. Theron's thinking with his... Careful. The king has spies everywhere. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. That girl is nobody. She has no business in the royal wing. Unless she's part of the plan, maybe she was supposed to save the brat, win the king's trust. Then we deal with her before she becomes a real problem. Footsteps faded. Ilara stood frozen, her heart pounding. She looked down at Kyle, sleeping peacefully in her arms, and felt a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. They wanted to hurt him, hurt her. She wouldn't let them. She was beginning to understand that in saving Kyle, she'd stepped into a deadly game. A game where the stakes were a kingdom, and the price of losing was death. But she'd also gained something unexpected. Purpose, a reason to be brave. And maybe, though she barely dared admit it, the beginning of something that felt dangerously like hope. Chapter 3. Fire and Frost. The attack came 3 weeks after Ilara's arrival at the Royal Lodge. She had fallen into a routine, tending Kyle, learning the rhythms of court life, and trying to ignore the constant scrutiny. Theron visited daily, always bringing something. A toy wolf carved from moonwood, a soft blanket woven by the pack's finest craftswomen, books from his private library, discovering that she loved to read. "For when he's asleep and you're bored," he'd said, his rare smile transforming his stern face into something almost boyish. They'd fallen into an easy companionship. He'd sit in her quarters, reviewing reports while she rocked kale or mended clothes. Sometimes they'd talk about pack history, about his fears for his son, about her quiet life in the borderlands. He never pushed, never demanded, just existed beside her, as if her presence brought him peace. Ilara knew she was falling for him. It was foolish, dangerous even. He was the Alpha King and she was nobody. But when he looked at her with those gold eyes, soft with gratitude, when his hand would brush hers as he reached for kale, when he called her my Ilara without seeming to realize it, how could she not? The night of the attack, winter had tightened its grip on Silverwood. Snow fell thick and fast, muffling all sound. Ilara was in the nursery, Kyle finally asleep after a fussy evening, when she smelled it. Smoke. She ran to the door and found the corridor filling with acrid grey clouds. Fire. The lodge was burning. Panic seized her. She grabbed Kyle, wrapping him in blankets, and ran for the main stairs. But they were already consumed by flames, the ancient wood crackling and spitting. She turned back, heading for the servant stairs, but found her path blocked by a figure emerging from the smoke. Lady Morgana. She held a torch, her beautiful face twisted with hate. "Did you really think you could just waltz in here and take everything I've worked for?" Ilara clutched Kyle tighter. "Morgana, the lodge is burning. We need to get out." "Oh, the fire's quite contained to the royal wing, I assure you. I paid very good money to make sure of that." Morgana advanced, backing Ilara toward the nursery. "You and that brat will burn, and everyone will think it was the same traitors who tried to kill him before. Poor Theron will be devastated, and I'll be there to comfort him, to help him rebuild, to become his Luna at last." "You're insane." "I'm ambitious. There's a difference." Morgana raised the torch. "Nothing personal, Omega. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Ilara's wolf surged forward, protective fury overriding her Omega instincts to submit. She shifted partially, claws extending, a growl rumbling in her chest, even as she shielded Kale with her body. Morgana laughed. "Oh, you think you can fight me? An Omega against an Alpha-born? This will be entertaining." The torch swung down and shattered against a wall of ice. Ilara blinked. The corridor was suddenly freezing, frost spreading across the walls in intricate patterns. The flames retreated, hissing and dying, and standing between her and Morgana, his eyes blazing pure silver-white with rage, was Theron. Step away from them. His voice was barely human, all wolf now, all alpha fury. Morgana's face went white. "Your Majesty, I can explain. You set fire to my home. You tried to murder my son. Again." Each word was measured, deadly. "You were the traitor all along. Theron, please. You will address me as Your Majesty, even as I strip you of title and land and life." He stalked forward, and Morgana stumbled back. "Did you truly think I wouldn't figure it out? I've been watching you for weeks, waiting for you to make your move. If you knew, why didn't you arrest me?" "Because I needed you to reveal your co-conspirators, and you've done that beautifully tonight. My guards are rounding them up even as we speak." He glanced at Ilara. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still stunned. "Kyle's fine. We're both fine. Thank the moon." The relief in his voice was palpable. Then his attention snapped back to Morgana, and his expression hardened to stone. "You will be tried before the Pack Council, and you will pay for every moment of fear you put them through." Guards materialized from the smoke, seizing Morgana. She screamed threats and curses as they dragged her away, but Theron had already dismissed her from his mind. He crossed to Ilara in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, Kale between them. "I'm sorry," he breathed into her hair. "I should have acted sooner. You could have died. Both of you. But we didn't. You saved us." "No." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands framing her face. "You saved yourself. Did you see what you did? You stood against an Alpha-born. Protected my son with your own body. You're the bravest wolf I've ever known, Ilara. I'm not brave, I was terrified. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what must be done despite it. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she saw something shift in his eyes. Something heated and hungry and carefully restrained. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Anything. Do you want to stay, not just as Kale's guardian, but permanently? I know you have no reason to trust me, no reason to want this life, but I'm asking anyway. He took a breath. I'm asking you to be my Luna, to stand beside me, to help me rule this pack, to be a mother to Kale, and if you're willing, to bear my other children, to be mine. Ilara's heart stopped. Theron, I'm an Omega, unmated. I have no standing, no... You have everything that matters. Courage, compassion, love for my son, and... His voice dropped to a rough whisper. You've claimed a piece of my heart that I thought died with his mother. I'm not asking you to replace her. I'm asking you to help me become whole again, to give Kale the family he deserves, to give me a reason to believe in something beyond duty and obligation. Tears burned her eyes. What if I'm not enough? What if I fail? Then we fail together, but I don't think you will. You're stronger than you know, Ilara. He kissed her forehead, tender and reverent. Will you have me? Will you be my Luna and my mate? She thought of her small cabin, cold and empty. She thought of the borderlands, lonely and isolating, and then she thought of this. Kale's warm weight in her arms, Theron's steady strength, the possibility of belonging to something larger than herself. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll be yours. His kiss was gentle at first, a question and a promise, then deeper, as relief and desire and something that might have been love poured through the bond beginning to form between them. Kyle stirred and made a sleepy sound of protest at being squished, and they broke apart, laughing. We're going to have to work on our timing, Theron said ruefully. We have time. Ilara smiled up at him. All the time in the world. The fire was extinguished. Morgana and her conspirators were imprisoned, and as dawn broke over Silverwood, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose, Ilara stood at Theron's side and felt, for the first time in her life, like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Chapter 4. The Luna's Crown. The mating ceremony was held beneath the full moon, 3 months after the fire. Kyle was stronger now, walking and babbling and growing into his power. He'd shifted back and forth between forms with the easy confidence of a young prince, and his golden eyes, so like his father's, followed Ilara everywhere with complete trust and devotion. She had grown into her role as well. The court had accepted her grudgingly at first, but with increasing warmth as they saw how she steadied Theron, how she loved Kale, how she visited the pack's wounded and brought food to the elderly, and listened to the concerns of the lowest Omega with the same respect she showed to the highest Alpha. You're a natural leader, Theron had told her one evening as they watched Kale play with a toy wolf. I think you always were. You just needed the right stage. Now, dressed in a gown of silver and blue, crowned with moonflowers and standing before the entire pack, Ilara felt the weight of destiny settle on her shoulders. But it wasn't heavy. It felt right. The elder spoke the ancient words, his voice carrying through the sacred grove. The moon has witnessed this bond. The pack has accepted this union. Do you, Ilara of no clan, accept the title of Luna? Do you swear to protect this pack, to stand beside your Alpha, to raise the heir and any future children with wisdom and love? I do. Her voice rang clear and strong. And do you, Theron Blackwood, Alpha King of Silverwood, accept this Omega as your true mate? Do you swear to honor her, protect her, and rule beside her in partnership? I do. Theron's eyes never left her face, and in them she saw everything. Love, pride, promise. Then let the bonding be complete. Let the marks be made. Theron's hands were gentle as he tilted her head, exposing the curve of her neck. His teeth grazed her skin, and she shivered with anticipation. Then the bite, sharp and sweet, claiming and marking her as his before the pack and the moon. The bond snapped into place like lightning, and Ilara gasped. She could feel him now, his emotions flooding through the connection. Love, fierce and protective, pride in her strength, relief that she'd said yes, and underneath it all, a bone-deep contentment, as if a piece of him that had been missing had finally clicked into place. She bit him in return, gentler but no less meaningful, and felt his joy surge through the bond. When they broke apart, the pack howled their approval. Kyle, held by the elder, shifted and added his tiny howl to the chorus, making everyone laugh. The celebration lasted until dawn. There was feasting and dancing, songs sung and stories told. Warriors came to swear their loyalty to their new Luna. Omegas brought her flowers. Even the cynics who doubted her couldn't deny the rightness of the match. Later, as the sun began to paint the sky in shades of lavender and gold, Theron led her to the top of the ancient oak at the heart of the lodge. They stood on a platform high above the forest, silverwood spread out beneath them like a living tapestry. "This is where my father brought my mother after their mating ceremony," Theron said, his arm around her waist. He told her that being Luna meant seeing the whole forest, not just the trees, understanding that every wolf from the strongest alpha to the smallest pup was part of the pack's strength. Wise man. He was. Theron turned her to face him. "I want you to know something. When I asked you to be my Luna, I wasn't thinking politically. I wasn't thinking about heirs or alliances or what the pack needed. I was thinking about you, about how you make me laugh, about how safe I feel when you're near, about how Kale lights up when he sees you, about how my life went from duty and darkness to something I actually want to live." Ilara felt tears prick her eyes. "Theron, I'm saying I love you, Ilara. Completely. Inconveniently. Forever." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for taking a chance on a damaged king and his wounded pup." "You're not damaged," she said fiercely. "You're strong and honorable and good. And I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes." "Good." His grin was pure mischief. "Fear keeps us sharp. And we're going to need sharp. Being Luna won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against hers. "But we'll face it together." "Together," he agreed. Below them, the pack was stirring, preparing for a new day. Kyle would wake soon, demanding breakfast and attention. There would be councils to attend, disputes to settle, a kingdom to help rule. But for now, in this perfect moment, Ilara allowed herself to simply be. She had come to Silverwood as nobody, a rogue Omega, alone and forgotten. She had fed a hungry pup and become a Luna. She had found not just a mate, but a family, a purpose, a home. The sun broke over the mountains, flooding the forest with light. Theron's hand found hers and squeezed gently, and Ilara knew with the certainty that only true love brings, that this was just the beginning. They had a pack to protect, a son to raise, a kingdom to strengthen, and a love that would endure through whatever challenges the future brought. She had fed a pup and found her destiny, and in the end, wasn't that what every great love story was? Two souls finding each other against impossible odds and choosing to build something beautiful together. As the first rays of sunlight touched her face, Ilara smiled. The rogue warrior had come begging for milk, and in return, she'd given him everything: life, love, and a family worth fighting for. The pack howled their morning greeting, and the Luna howled with them, her voice strong and clear and full of hope. A new day had dawned in Silverwood, and it was glorious.